All right, here we go. Well, it is 7 o'clock. And so I will call to order this special meeting of the Town of St. Andrews Planning Advisory Committee. We are meeting on special business tonight here at the W.C. O'Neill Arena Complex Council Chambers. Looking around, recording of attendance, looking around the table. Mr. Ingalls is absent today, but everyone else is here and at the table. And we have Mr. Gopin online, and Mr. Knopper is at the table as well. Has everyone had a chance to look at the agenda? If so, I will entertain a motion to approve. Mr. Cross, thank you very much. Seconded. Mr. Tanner, thank you very much. If you're ready for the question, there's no further discussion. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye. There being none opposed, we will move forward. Thank you. As we begin tonight, we recognize that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Peskotomuhkati people, and welcome to our meeting. Looking around to see if there's any conflict of interest with tonight's file. No, there being none. All right, wonderful. So moving forward on our agenda, special business, the first item is a variance request for a parking reduction and lot depth reduction. We'll deal with the two variances separately. For Evans Land Development, PID 013-25240, and this is file number PAC 240305. Mr. Gopin, did you want to take us through your planning report?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Voices here, visuals there. It's really confusing to my brain.
Everybody see that? Is that coming through?
Yep, you're good, Xander.
Okay. And so I'm kind of going to present the variances together. Depending on what you do with them, there is a second part which is about the subdivision and public street and land for public purposes. You can motion on the variances separately, but I'm going to talk about them both here.
All right.
So this is currently a 5.5 acre vacant lot in the serviced residential zone. Bar is blocking text, so I can't see it. A proposed apartment complex has been under consideration by council for a bit now. And depending on market conditions, it would be 70 to 120 dwelling units. That's in 12 buildings spread across 4 properties. So there's a subdivision involved. And there would be a new public road. The MR2 zone is what this project would have to be in, and the rezoning is in process that actually I think started back in May of 2023. And PAC did take a look at it. I think it was probably back in May or June of 2023, and the views were favorable at that time, and advising council to go ahead with the rezoning. Council has since held 2 public hearings based on kind of the first one, because things have taken so long, the second one statutorily was required. And there has been quite a bit of back and forth with the developer on the site plan and making sure it conforms with the subdivision bylaw. And there have been, I guess, some minor changes to the site plan to get it into conformity. And it's as a result of that 2 variances are requested. One is a reduction in the required parking for blocks A and B. So I'll show you the map in a second. From 1.25 spaces per unit to 1 space per unit. And second variance request is lot depth reduction on lot B from 30.5 meters to 21.5 meters. So these are just aerials and the zoning of the property currently. There's some photos from on site. And here is the site plan. So blocks A, this is block A, this is block B. Block C and D, there's no variances involving them. And we'll take a look at the lay out again when we get to the land for public purposes and all that stuff, although I do have to talk about it here. This is the lot depth, the side here. That's one of the variances being requested. This would be the frontage. So the depth is here, and most of the property has it, but one portion does not have the required 30.5 meters. And there is land for public purposes along the side there. And as well, this is where the parking reduction request is for these two blocks. This is just kind of conceptual that's been provided by the developer. And that's a 3-story option. The 70 to 120 units is 2 versus 3 stories. And that is, I guess, depending on market conditions, that's what the developer has been saying. So looking at policies and proposals in legislature, one new thing since the last time you looked at this, but I think we've talked about these enough that they should be starting to be a little bit familiar. The statements of public interest. These were introduced in October of 2023 by the province. They're a regulation under the Community Planning Act, so they supersede municipal plan zoning, or those other documents have to conform with them. Planning decisions like variance requests should as well. So one of the statements is to promote a range of housing options such as size, type, density, and design. And another one, these are both settlement pattern statements to promote and prioritize development in areas of communities with existing or planned public infrastructure and services. So while there is a new public road for this that would have sewer and water, there's a public road that would be accessed off of. There is sewer and water running past the property. So while it is greenfield development as opposed to infill, it is very much in an area where there is public infrastructure and services. And then moving to the municipal plan, there's a policy about efficient and sustainable land use and development patterns, mixing uses and densities, supporting pedestrian movement, and improving energy efficiency. So this is, I mean, it's not right downtown, but it's certainly within walking distance of a number of things that people would need to get to in town. The site plan has the subdivision bylaw requires multi-use pathways. There are sidewalks that would be accessed from the property. So the actual site plan itself takes this into account as well. There's a policy around the economy, around creating an economic climate that is conducive to investment. And this is something that comes up again and again and again. This lack of rental housing is impacting local businesses and institutions. And it's something that we talk about investment-ready communities a lot. And that's really what this policy is relating to. Oops. And finally, one specifically on housing, about, this is very similar to that statement of public interest, having diverse types of housing to meet the needs of various groups of people. And, a number of these units would be required to be accessible. And there's really just a great need for this type of rental units. I mean, there has been progress on rental housing in town. Obviously, there's a development going, couple developments very close to this one, but there's still a shortage. And those ones, from my understanding, they are rented as soon as they're available. So there's still need in the market for more rental housing. The site plan, there's been a lot of work back and forth with the developer and their consultant. It considers future development, future roads, different types of transportation. And while it does have new public infrastructure, it is as minimal as possible. So parking minimums are something that come up in planning a lot, and I think might have been some time since we've talked about them at PAC, and I think we've only really talked about them in the context of the of developments more in the town plat and historic business district. But it really is not best planning practice to require 1 1/4 spaces for apartment units. That's not something you see in zoning bylaws very much anymore. There's all sorts of reasons why. It really makes it harder to develop housing. It adds surface area that will create more stormwater runoff. And typically you have lots of areas with not so much in downtown St. Andrews, but a lot of cities around North America, and even towns like St. Stephen have tons and tons and tons of parking lots where it's really not needed. Now the developer may not need the variance. Based on the number of parking spaces on the site plan, that would limit the number of units they could get. And depending on the market, they may do the two-story buildings, and then the parking would be sufficient. But they're looking for flexibility, so that's why they're asking for the variance. And in regards to the lot depth variance, theoretically, it could be done on the site. The variance would not be necessary, but it would push the new public road to the north. And both staff and council, and I think even PAC mentioned that that road should align with Bar Road. So that pushes that lot further. It eats up that lot depth. And then the land for public purposes that is there, I think it's for drainage and possibly a walking trail. That's 8.7 meters more of lot depth. So if you were to consider that land for public purposes as part of the lot and part of the depth, then it would be a very minor variance, just a few feet. But in this case, it is a larger variance of 9.5 meters that is being requested. So because this is rezoning subject to a development agreement and a subdivision subject to a subdivision agreement, there are numerous additional terms and conditions that would be included in those. And we're kind of at the end of the process now with things like landscaping and all of those things have been taken into consideration by council. So I'm not recommending any conditions for these variances. And there are two variances and they can be treated separately. You can motion to approve both of them based on staff's recommendation. You can motion to approve the variance and add conditions. You can motion to reject one or both of the variances, or you can motion to table the application or one of the variances for more information. And there is a part two. It depends on what happens with the variances. So I will stop there and turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Mr. Gopin. Such a cliffhanger, right? Depending on what we do with this, depends on where we go. Does anyone have any questions for the planner? From the committee? No? All right. It does. Is the applicant here? Excellent. Do you want to make some comments, sir?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I'd like to thank you for holding this special meeting. Thank you for waiting.
Oh, have you been able to hear me so far?
We have, yeah, but yeah,
Okay. I'll recap if necessary.
you're good. You're good. Thank you.
So anyway, that given the public that extra time, I think was a good thing to happen. And it still keeps us on track. So again, thank you. Thanks staff for making those arrangements. There was one letter of concerns, and in the letter, I was a little, I wouldn't say put off, but I looked at it and it sort of implied that there hadn't been opportunity to actually look into things and respond to them. Although the notice, I've got a copy of the notice that was sent out. It offered people to make a submission online. The application material available at the town office if someone chose to go in and look at it that way. Also, it states in that notice that if somebody wants to submit comments in writing, they're certainly welcome to do so. So I wanted to make that point if I could. So the parking, some other aspects of that are taken into consideration is we do have aging population. And this development is going to be geared towards general people wanting to rent, but as well as focused on lower income, accessible units, and seniors. And I think that corresponds very well with the municipal plan. And if you look at those cohorts, many times they don't have vehicles. I have a complex in St. John, 52 units. We have 47 parking spaces. I've yet to see the parking lot totally full because we're catering to the same people. So I think the other thing is the variance on the minimum lot depth. Mr. Gopin's explained it very well. We could move that. We could misalign the intersections. I don't think anyone wants to see it. We don't want to see it. So, and we've been careful in putting things together on the road system, access to adjoining properties, things like that, just so that it doesn't box anyone in. If there's any questions, I'd be pleased to try to address them, but that's what I have to
Excellent.
submit at this point.
Well, we'll give you that opportunity now. If anyone from the committee has any questions? No?
Thank you.
Thank you. Shall I assume no one online, or is there someone online? Oh, my goodness, I should not assume anything.
To them if they,
Okay.
for those that are online, if you have any questions, can you raise your hand for the PAC? Mr. Bates or Ms. Cooper, if you have any questions for PAC, please raise your hand. I'm gonna say no.
Excellent. All right. Well, it comes back to the table then. Let's,
I'd like to make a motion that the Planning Advisory Committee of the Town of St. Andrews approves the reduction in the required parking for Block A and Block B from 1.25 spaces per unit to 1 space per unit.
moved by Mr. Simmons, seconded by Mr. Tanner. Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion? No more questions? If you're ready, I will call for the vote. All those in favor of approving this variance as described, please signify by saying aye. Aye, and none opposed. That motion is carried. Thank you very much.
Okay, just go again. I'd like to make a motion that the Planning Advisory Committee of the Town of St. Andrews approves the Block B reduction in minimum lot depth from 30.5 meters to 21.5 meters.
Thank you very much for that motion. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Mr. Kerr. Thank you very much. No, any further questions, discussion? There being none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the variance on the Block B reduction of minimum lot depth, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There being none, that motion is also carried. Thank you very much. Which allows us to answer the burning question. What happens now? We are now going to look at views of our committee to the town council on public street and land for public purpose for the same Evans Land Development PID 0132 5240. It's file number PAC 240306. Once again, I will turn it over to Mr. Gopin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Probably not going to be super exciting. Nothing really new here. In the process of this application coming through, the new subdivision bylaw came into effect. You may remember giving views on that, which is really good. This is the first project that is required to meet those newer standards, which are updated from the 1984 version. So 40 years in the making, and I think leads to much better development. And this does meet the standards of it now that variances have been granted. There is space for future streets to access adjacent properties if they were ever developed. The new street aligns with Bar Road for safety, and the land for public purposes takes three forms. There's a public mini park accessible from Mowat, and you've got a bunch of new developments in the area. And one of them did not require land for public purposes because it was just, there was no subdivision involved. And one was cash in lieu, so no new public spaces. So having land for public purposes as a public park on this property, that's definitely a good thing to add some green space to this area when you are seeing increased development. There are reserve strips, which help with the road frontage calculation, so it's off the new public street. But the nice thing about these is that because you're at a key intersection here, and the town is exploring some public transit options with the hop on, hop off bus, there could be a stop at this location in the future. And so this extra space could be used for bus stops, benches, things like that, right alongside the sidewalk there without blocking the sidewalk. There's a pedestrian trail and drainage area that's the one that eats into the lot depth, but it also connects to the rear blocks, and it could connect to future trails if they were ever developed on other properties around there. But even if they weren't, it's a different way to get to the properties in the rear, which doesn't involve the road. In total, it's 1,588 square meters, which exceeds the required 8%, exclusive of the new streets. And the final road and drainage design are subject to approval of the municipal engineer. So there will be an engineer signing off on things before they actually start building them. To give you a little bit of comfort, you're not being asked to be engineers here. So in giving a recommendation, the advisory committee, you should give consideration to the topography of the land, the provision of lots suitable for the intended use, the street intersections and interceptions being as nearly as possible at right angles, convenient access to the proposed subdivision and to lots within it, and the convenient further subdividing of the land or adjoining land. And staff recommendation is to recommend this site plan to council as shown with the land for public purposes and the new public street. And just I didn't put it in this presentation. I'll pop back to the slide so you can actually see what we're talking about, and I'll just highlight a few things here. So this is the mini park area. These are the reserve strips. There's even some benches indicated on them already. The future street access. So if these properties were ever further developed here, there would be a way to connect. This is the walking trail and drainage area. And this would be a multi-use path. So that's for cyclists and pedestrians. And there's one of the things about the new subdivision bylaw. It lowered the required right-of-way width and minimum road surface width. So there's going to be less paving in this development, and even less now that the parking areas can remain as they are. And another requirement in the subdivision bylaw is street trees. And you can see the street trees here. And the consultant was thoughtful enough to think about where the sun was going to be coming from and how things should be shaded. So they're on the south side of the road. So this is our first subdivision to go through this new bylaw with these new requirements, and the site plan. It's been reviewed by Judy Hartford as well, our senior development officer, and she agrees that it meets all of the requirements, and is a good site plan, and makes sense to have that be a new public street, and land for public purposes makes sense where it is. So that's it.
Well, thank you very much. Mr. Gokin. All right, so back to the committee at this point. Just looking for views of support or concern, or Councillor Harland?
I think the plan looks great, and I really appreciate the fact that attention was paid to some details to make it aesthetically pleasing in the town. So when I look at that vacant lot, because I drive by it, I live in Shamcook, so I drive by it a lot. And to consider what it's going to become, it's very lovely. I appreciate that. So thank you.
Agreed, thank you.
Sorry, just to note PAC that if this is approved for rezoning of council, the land for public purpose of the northern part where you saw that little mini pocket park, it's actually written into the development agreement that it would actually be developed by the town within a year of completion of building one. So
okay.
if approved, that would also be something that would be enhanced almost immediately.
Yeah, it's good. All right. Does anyone have some suggestions for a motion or some views? Would you like me to write something down on a letter, or what's your pleasure?
Wow, whatever.
Motion.
I'd like to recommend the motion that the Planning Advisory Committee of the Town of St. Andrews recommends the assent to the new public street and the land for public purposes as shown on the site plan for Evan Lands Development Limited PID 01325240.
Thank you for that motion. Do I have a seconder? Mr. Cross, thank you very much. Any further discussion by the committee? There being none, all those in favor of approving the motion, please signify by saying aye. And there are none opposed, so that motion is also carried. Thank you very much. Does this still require a letter?
The information that was provided, as there was no further details, will just be the motion that was
The motion is
passed.
good.
So the
Perfect.
motion is good. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And to note, PAC, that all three motions tonight will actually be included in the subdivision agreement because they have to be written in as part of a schedule. So
Okay.
they
great.
will it will be carried over to council as well.
Nice. Thank you very much. All right, so we move to question period. Any questions? Comments, concerns? Any PAC member comments tonight on this agenda or anything else? There being none, 7:29. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.